Hello and welcome back to the channel. So today we'll be talking about getting the best possible team that money can buy. So going under the salary cap is going to be $255,400,000. So that's what we have to work with. So starting off, we're going to have Andy Reid as our head coach. Obviously, Super Bowl winning head coach. We definitely need that if we want to make sure that we win this upcoming Super Bowl. And pairing him with a offensive coordinator that's really going to reach for the skies, and that's going to be Eric Bieniemy. Now, obviously, last year at Washington didn't have the best year, but when he's paired with Andy Reid, who's Andy Reid's really just being that play caller, it really elevates that offense. So, being that kind of Air West Coast offense, Eric Bieniemy is going to be our offensive coordinator. Going with the defense coordinator, I could have gone with really anybody. I thought about going with Lou Anarumo, possibly going with other coaches, but I decided to go with Steve Spagnuolo. Obviously, the last two Super Bowls have been very very instrumental in playing with even like not the best defense, like some of rookie players bringing the best out of them, but that defense really carried them in the playoffs and also in the Super Bowl. So him with that 4-3 blitz defense, I think it's going to bring out the best in our potential players. So let's go into our players. So obviously at quarterback, we're going to have Patrick Mahomes. You can't win a Super Bowl without Patrick Mahomes almost at this point. And he's going to be the best player to kind of elevate our team as well, especially our offense. So Patrick Mahomes being QB1. Then going to backup quarterback, we need a guy who's going to be able to come in for maybe a couple of series, maybe in potentially the last game we have like the number one seed locked up, and that's going to be Jake Browning. Came in last year for the Bengals, did a really really good job. Um, has really good value as well, being the backup quarterback, not too much against our cap. So really like Jake Browning in that scenario. At running backs, we're going to have four running backs, and so let's list them right here. So at running back one, we're going to have Jahmyr Gibbs, breakout rookie season, has some very good receiving numbers as well. It's going to be able to help, branch out our offense a little bit. But him being more of a receiving back, I want to have more of a power back, and that's going to be Isaiah Pacheco. Obviously, in the Chiefs rank and the Chiefs system, has done an amazing job. But pairing him with Jahmyr Gibbs is going to give us an amazing 1-2 punch that's going to be absolutely devastating for any defense we go up against. At running back three, I want to have a guy that's kind of like a combination of the two, but is not as good at one or the other than our first two running backs. So running back three is going to be James Cook from the Buffalo Bills. Did an amazing job last year down the stretch once Joe Brady became the offensive coordinator, got more into the receiving game. So he gives us that receiving option that we would not have if Jahmyr Gibbs might get hurt or whatever happens. So James Cook, good value as well. And then running back four, kind of like a depth piece, but I really want somebody who could come in if something drastically happens, and that's going to be Keaton Mitchell. Came in last year for the Ravens once they had a lot of injuries, had an amazing, amazing stretch, but unfortunately got injured. But I think he's going to have a really good couple of years, and I think having him as a running back four for really good value is going to be really good for this team. Now let's go into wide receivers. So obviously we need X, Y, and Z. So our starting three is going to be Mike Evans at X. Love him there. Big body wide receiver that is going to be able to be there for Patrick Holmes. He's going to be able to get open. At Z, I have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who can potentially interchange with our Y, and our Y is going to be Puka Nakua. Puka Nakua, greatest value that I have on this roster right now. But like I said, both him and Amon-Ra St. Brown can switch at being as far as being that ZY kind of wide receiver. So it just really depends on the matchup. But I love that first three wide receivers. Now for our next 4, 5, and 6. Specialty roles, really, especially I don't really have a backup for Mike Evans. That'll be more for like a tight end scenario, and I'll show you that later. But as far as wide receiver four, want to have a very reliable slot wide receiver, and that's gonna be Khalil Shakir. Kind of broke out last year, and then I think he's gonna have a really good this year, especially because with Stephon Diggs out, more targets gonna be spread out. So I think Khalil Shakir is gonna be a really good value as well. And then wide receiver five, speedster, need that deep threat ability. That's going to be Rashid Shaheed from the Saints. Really, really dangerous whenever you throw his way. Love him and this offense. And then wide receiver six, more so of a returner, but still has some receiving capabilities, is going to be a Xavier Gipson, but definitely more so the punt returner slash kick returner in this offense, or in this team. Now we go to our tight ends. So I have three tight ends. Two are mainly going to be tight ends. The third one's going to be more so of a tight end slash fullback hybrid. So tight end one is going to be Sam Laporta. Broke out last year, really, really good rookie year. He's going to be backed up by Isaiah Likely. Isaiah Likely, when Mark Andrews got hurt, stepped up right away. And I hope that's going to be kind of the same as that way. If something happens with Sam Laporta, you have Isaiah Likely there. Or if you want to go on two tight end sets, is a very dangerous team to go into two tight end sets. And then Chig Okonkwo from the Titans moved around pretty much everywhere, was a fullback, was a tight end for that team. Like I said, really good position flexibility that I really like to have in this offense. Now let's go to our offensive line. Offensive line is the most important position, especially for the offense, because without a good offensive line, I don't know the last time that a actual Super Bowl winning team didn't have a good offensive line. So let's go with the offensive line right now. Starting with at left tackle, we have Christian Darrisaw. First 2 years in Minnesota has been really, really good for him. Sorry, first 3 years. Sorry about that. First 3 years, he has been really good for Minnesota. Kind of on the cheap too, as far as like starting left tackle, cap hit. So amazing for that. Then his backup, more of a veteran leadership, and Tyron Smith. Love him. He's at the Jets right now. Obviously, whenever he is playing, he's playing like all pro, but it's kind of hard for him sometimes to start all the time. So if we just need a spot starter or at least keep like a good veteran presence in that offensive line, love having Tyron Smith there. Then you got Landon Dickerson. Landon Dickerson at left guard. Love him from the Eagles. Very, very imposing force. He's going to be backed up by Steve Avila. Steve Avila had a really good rookie year. Now, technically, he's going to be a center for the Rams this year, but last year he was a left guard. Really, really good year for him. And also a pretty reasonable cheat for offensive line. Next, going to go with Creed Humphrey as your number one center. Now, Creed Humphrey has a really good connection with Patrick Mahomes. That's another good reason to have him. But also, as far as value, pretty good value at center as well. Going to be backed up by Mitch Morse. Now, that Mitch Morse gives another veteran presence in the locker room, especially for the offensive line. And he has been really good for the Bills recently, so now he's with the Jaguars. So we'll see how that goes. But also really good value. Next, I want to have a tandem. So Creed Humphrey has really worked really well with Trey Smith, who also comes in at pretty good value. So I have Trey Smith at the right guard position, and then being backed up by Graham Glasgow from the Lions. Really, really solid as well, being like really instrumental in that turnaround for the Detroit Lions too. So love Graham Glasgow as being that backup right guard. Then we go into right tackle. Now, even though this is the most expensive position, Penei Sewell is an absolute stud. So Penei Sewell being that right tackle for our team, being the anchor that I don't have to worry about anything, is going to be absolutely imperative for this offense to work. And then his backup being Zach Tom. Now, Zach Tom has been outstanding as a right tackle for the Packers, but he has position flexibility just move anywhere. So that's why I love about Zach Tom. I think he'd be a great addition to our team.
Now moving on to defense. So obviously we need to have a very dominant defensive line because that's what Steve Spagnuolo's defense really needs. So starting at right end, we have Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons absolutely dominant off the end and surprisingly a pretty good cap hit. Backing him up is going to be Will Anderson Jr. Had a really good rookie season last year. He could possibly be even a really good replacement if Micah Parsons gets hurt or something happens. Like Will Anderson's another really, really solid edge rusher. At left end, you're going to have Aiden Hutchinson. Aiden Hutchinson has had really two good seasons back to back as far as like turning that lines around. Going to be kind of a leader a young leader in the locker room. Going to be a little bit of a higher cap, but I think it's going to be well worth it. His backup's going to be Leonard Floyd. Leonard Floyd, very good veteran presence that consistently has, anywhere between 8 to 12 sacks. Really reliable pass rusher who's at a pretty good cap, not going to lie. And then backing up them, going to have us a really good rotation, going to be Byron Young. Byron Young was a really good rookie last year for the Rams and has a really, really easy cap hit to kind of like deal with. But I think that's a really great rotation at defensive end. Going into our defensive tackles, three tech, Chris Jones. Chris Jones, I think, is well worth his cap hit because of how dominant he has been for Steve Spagnuolo. And backing him up is going to be Derek Brown. Both of those are a little bit higher on the cap hit, but as far as like being worth it, I feel like this is, really, really important to have a very, very good presence in the three tech. At nose, I got a young Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis is another dominant young nose tackle for the Eagles. Loved him coming out, and getting him for this defense is going to be really, really imperative because he's not going to have to play all down because guess who's backing him up? That's going to be DJ Reader. DJ Reader, obviously, a long time Cincinnati Bengal. Well, Houston Texans, then Cincinnati Bengal. I think he's going to be really, really good for the Lions, but in this scenario for our team, I think he'd be really, really good as far as like being a not only a veteran presence, just like Chris Jones will be, but also good rotation for Jordan Davis. Now let's move on to our linebackers. So at outside linebacker, we got Frankie Louvu. Frankie Louvu really broke out at the Panthers and has been a very, very dominant, especially run defender. Not the best at pass coverage, but that's okay if we're just using him more for blitzing packages. And then backing him up is going to be Christian Harris. Now, Christian Harris can play both inside or out. I think just depends on where Steve Spagnuolo wants him. But he has had a really, really good rookie season, followed by a really good sophomore season. Obviously, being there with D'Amico Ryans really helped. I think Christian Harris is another good player to look out for the upcoming season too. At middle linebacker, I'm willing to spend a little bit. I'm going to take Fred Warner. Yes, it's a little bit more of a cap hit, but I want to make sure I have the best linebacker as possible to do my scheme because I need those leaders, I need those presence in the middle, and that's going to be Fred Warner. Backing him up is going to be more of the blitzing middle linebacker. It just depends on what kind of scheme, what kind of like we want to run. But that's going to be Ivan Pace Jr. Undrafted last year. I loved him coming out, and he is an absolute dominant middle linebacker in the middle whenever he's blitzing. Like, he will make sure that he will get some kind of a pressure in there. So, love Ivan Pace Jr. He could play outside linebacker in the scenario too, as far as like being the backup to Frankie Lou. Thought about switching them, but I'll keep them as where they are right now. Other outside linebacker, more so of like a middle linebacker, Matt Milano. Obviously, yes, I'm going to be, paying a little bit more for Matt Milano, but I'm willing to risk it because I think he's going to be really, really stinging good. And his backup is going to be Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah from the Browns, who's a really good pass coverage, a linebacker. Like I said, both him and Matt Milano try to cover any kind of tight end, going to be shut down. So I love both those linebackers as well. And then JOK has a really low cap hit. Now going up to our cornerbacks. So I mainly did 4 cornerbacks with a safety / cornerback hybrid. So starting off, cornerback 1, Sauce Gardner. Yes, a little bit more of a pricey corner, but I think it would be well worth it. A shutdown corner being paired with Patrick Surtain. There is no one who's going to be able to pass on this defense. I think having Sauce Gardner and Patrick Surtain being like those two dominant outside corners is going to leave Trent McDuffie, who's going to be our nickel, just going all across the field, matching up well. Because, like I said, I don't think there's going to be anybody who's going to be able to pass on this defense. Backing him up, I have Deron Bland. I think in a dime or even like a like a quarters scenario, I think it'll be fine. If you have Deron Bland in, he's more so of going to be like, I'm not going to try to put him at the best guy, but as far as like being like a ball hawking merchant, that's fine with me. I think he's not going to start, so I think that's fine. And then cornerback 5, Brian Branch. Now Brian Branch is technically listed as a safety, but he can play nickel. He can play corner. So I'll have him more so as a corner in this scenario because I want to have position flexibility in this defense. Starting at free safety, we have Antoine Winfield Jr. Love him. A little bit higher cap hit, but as far as like being a communicator, being an enforcer, being a ball hawk as well, Antoine Winfield Jr. is like the guy to get. Backing him up is going to be Javon Holland from the Dolphins. Love him too. A lot of position flexibility he can come down to. to play nickel if something has to Trent McDuffie, but love him in the back end as well. Now, I technically have three strong safeties, and the reason why is because I'm kind of thinking of like what the differences that they both present. So, Kyle Hamilton being the starting safety, pretty good cap hit. I love his play, and also love the fact that he kind of showed out that yes, his combine might not have been the best, but he still showed out like proved himself in the NFL. Love him. And then his backup being Talanoa Hufanga, who got hurt last year. So that's what I'm saying. It just really depends. That's the reason why I have three strong safeties, because there's potential for him to get hurt. But when he's on the field, he was really, really sticking good last year, well, the previous year. So having him is going to be a really, really good enforcer in the back end. And then a little bit of a veteran presence is going to be Von Bell. Von Bell, obviously, uh, been at the Saints, been at the Bengals, and then 1 year at the Panthers. A really good enforcer in the backfield, a really good communicator in the backfield. So obviously, like him, being that strong safety, veteran presence in the locker room, even if it has to just be on the special teams, he'll be a really good, solid tackler. So moving on to special teams. Now, special teams, I want to make sure I get the best of the best. So it doesn't really matter about like cap hit, but I didn't get the highest paid players at each position. So starting off, Justin Tucker. I'm going to get the most accurate kicker in the NFL history. He's only number three, surprisingly, as far as cap hit, but I think it'll be well worth it. You get a guy that you know for certain is going to make his kicks, and I'm not having to worry about him at all. Punter, I'm gonna have Tommy Townsend. Really good punter, only 13th as far as like cap it, which is kind of surprising. Not gonna lie, but Tommy Townsend, we're not gonna be punting that much, but when we do, I want to make sure I get that pin that deep and right in within the 8 yard line to pin them deep. And then long snapper, a little bit, because I'm a Panthers fan, but JJ Jansen, long time Carolina Panther, um, doesn't make mistakes. And so if he hasn't done that for so long, I was between him and Josh Harris. Josh Harris gets paid a little bit more, so I'm going to go with JJ Jansen, very solid option who's going to be there and be a very good veteran presence in that special teams room, which honestly is really sticking good now that I look at it. So that's going to be our team so far. I think we did a really good job as far as like keeping up some more cap space, especially we have to get some more people. If we have to trace some more people, um, I think I did a really good job. I could have possibly spent more money elsewhere, but I decided just to stick with what we have. I think we made a Super Bowl winning roster. Let me know what y'all think in the comments below, and tell me if you like what this concept. I like making rosters of hypotheticals. So, thank you so much for watching, and bye.